Concord was not treated like a small experiment. It was presented as a serious bet on PlayStation's future. A new sci-fi shooter, a new team of characters, a new live service world that was supposed to last for years. Sony had the money, the platform, the marketing power, and the confidence to push it forward. This was not just another game release. It was part of a bigger strategy. But behind the polished trailers and expensive presentation, one question was already waiting. Did players actually want this game? Because in gaming, a big company can buy development. It can buy production value. It can buy attention for a moment. But it cannot buy desire. Concord began as a promise. And that promise was about to face reality. By the time Concord arrived, the gaming industry was chasing the same dream. A game that never really ends. New seasons, new characters, new cosmetics, new updates, and players who keep coming back for years. To executives, live service games looked like powerful machines. One successful title could generate attention, loyalty, and revenue for a very long time. But players already had their machines. They already had games they trusted, friends they played with, progress they did not want to lose, communities they already belonged to. Concord was not only asking for money, it was asking for time. And time is the hardest thing to steal in gaming. Sony wanted a long-term platform. But first, Concord had to survive day one. Concord entered a battlefield that was already crowded. The hero shooter market was not waiting for a new king. It was already full of strong names, loyal communities, recognizable characters, and free games that players understood instantly. That made Concord's mission extremely difficult. It could not simply look polished. It could not simply feel expensive. It had to feel necessary. Players needed a reason to leave what they already loved. A reason to learn new characters. A reason to bring their friends into a new world. But Concord's identity did not cut through the noise. It looked serious. It looked ambitious. It looked carefully produced. But it did not look essential. And in a crowded market, being optional can be fatal. Then came the price. Concord launched as a paid game in a world where many of its biggest competitors were free. That created a wall before the match even started. For a new live service shooter, this was dangerous. The game needed players fast. It needed full lobbies. It needed social momentum. It needed people talking, sharing clips, and convincing friends to join. But $40 made players hesitate. They were not just buying a game. They were betting that the game would survive. And that was the real problem. A live service game needs trust before it can build loyalty. Concord was asking for belief before it had earned that trust. At $40, that belief became much harder to sell. Hero shooters live or die by their characters. The maps matter, the weapons matter, the modes matter. But characters are what players remember. They become favorites. They become identities. They become the reason someone chooses one game over another. Concord needed a roster that felt magnetic. Characters people wanted to talk about, defend, main, and return to. Instead, the reaction was cold. The designs looked loud, but not unforgettable. They looked expensive, but not iconic. They looked like they belonged to a universe that wanted personality, but struggled to create attachment. And for a hero shooter, that is a serious problem. Players do not just choose abilities. They choose a fantasy. Concord had characters, but not enough people wanted to become them. Concord's marketing had scale. It had action. It had cinematic energy. It had expensive-looking trailers and a world that clearly wanted to feel important. But it struggled to answer the one question that mattered. Why should players care? The message felt unclear. Was this a competitive shooter? A character-driven universe? The campaign created noise, but not conviction. And when marketing fails to explain the product, the audience becomes suspicious. Players do not need another game asking for their attention. They already have too many. They need a reason. Concord showed a world. It showed ambition. It showed production value. But it never made that world feel urgent. And without urgency, hype fades fast. Launch day should have been Concord's moment. The servers should have felt alive. The conversation should have grown. Players should have filled lobbies, shared clips, tested characters, and pulled their friends into matches. This was the moment where doubt was supposed to disappear. But the momentum never came. Instead, the launch felt quiet. And for a live service shooter, silence is dangerous. Empty lobbies create doubt. Doubt creates hesitation. Hesitation creates even fewer players. Then the failure begins to feed itself. A game like Concord does not just need sales. It needs proof of life. It needs the feeling that something is happening right now. But on launch day, the market gave Sony a warning. The room was too quiet. Then Sony made the decision that turned Concord into gaming history. Sales were stopped, refunds were offered, and the game was prepared to go offline. Only 2 weeks after release, Concord was effectively gone. That speed made the failure impossible to ignore. Most failed games linger. They get patches, discounts, roadmaps, balance updates, apology statements, and promises of improvement. Concord did not get that chance. Sony looked at the response and decided the damage was too deep. The message was brutal. This was not a slow decline. This was not a quiet abandonment. This was not a game slowly fading over months. Concord was launched, rejected, and removed. Fast. And that speed became the story. The collapse did not end with the game. It reached the studio behind it. Firewalk was supposed to help build Sony's live service future. The team represented a bigger ambition, a shift toward multiplayer worlds that could last for years. Instead, Concord became the project that defined its downfall. That made the story heavier. This was not just about weak momentum or bad sales. It was about years of work, creative effort, studio identity, and a corporate strategy that failed in public. A studio can spend years building a world, but the market can judge that world in days. And when Concord failed to find players, the entire vision collapsed with it. Firewalk built the game, but the audience never arrived. And without an audience, the future disappeared. The verdict is simple. Concord did not fail because Sony lacked money. It failed because money could not buy attention. The game had production value. It had a major publisher. It had a serious plan behind it. It had the structure of a long-term live service project. But structure is not the same as demand. Concord entered a crowded market with a paid price tag, unclear identity, weak momentum, and characters that failed to connect widely enough. That combination was fatal. A live service game is not alive because a company says it is. It is alive because players choose to return. And for Concord, that choice never happened. The game was not just shut down. It was not just forgotten. It was deleted. Concord was built to last for years. Instead, it became a 2-week warning. In gaming, hype can open the door. But only players decide what survives. This case is closed.